Good day, welcome to Clearpoint Nigeria Limited, NEBOSH International General Certificate in Occupational Safety and Health, IGC 1, Element 1. My name is Chris, and I'm going to be anchoring you for this section. My contact number is 0805 610 5428. I repeat again, 0805 6105428. That's also my WhatsApp line. Without wasting our time, we'll go straight to what we have for this time. And please pay attention. Where necessary, I will let you know where you need to pay attention. I also let you know where you need to just have head knowledge, and we promise it to be a worthwhile class. Alright. Our learning objective for this element 1 of IGC certificate is we're going to be discussing the moral, social, and financial reason for managing health and safety in workplace. We're going to be explaining how health and safety is regulated and the consequences of non-compliance. We're going to summarize the main health and safety duties of different group of people at work. We're going to be explaining how contractors should be selected, monitored, and managed. Morals and money, element 1.1. Health is the absence of disease or ill. We're looking at the key terms. We've seen all this throughout the class. Safety is the absence of risk of serious personal injury, while welfare is the access to basic facilities. So with time we'll be seeing what health is all about, what safety is all about, what welfare is talking about. This is just a group exercise. Why might the management of an organization not consider health and safety to be a priority? Why would management of an organization not consider health and safety to be a priority? There are a number of reasons why that should be, but as time goes on, you get to understand. Moral reason for managing health and safety. Global statistics from International Labour Organization (ILO) Safe Work Program. Over 35,000 work-related fatal incidents occur each year. They also state that 2.75 million of work-related fatalities each year. They also stated that 2.4 million fatalities from occupational disease and 270 million accidents and 160 million diseases occur in a year due to work. This also leads to 4% of global gross domestic product that is lost. Now, this is another group exercise. An employee at your workplace has been seriously injured in a workplace accident. In groups, list the possible effect and implication of this accident on the injured employee, the company, and the line manager. I'll just go briefly to talk on the employee and also briefly on the company and also the line manager. For the employee, he has to go through pains. Alright, for the period he's not going to be at work, he may not get paid depending on the nature of the incident, and medical bills. Alright, and that also has effect on his dependents, his family members, his work, and all that. On the company, it can lead to closure of the company, it can be prosecuted, it can pay compensation, it can lead to high insurance premium and what have you. On the line manager, he has to make sure he makes up for the man who is not available. The team will now have to do extra hour overtime and to compensate for the man hour that the man who is injured or supposed to contribute, and so on and so forth. Financial reason for managing health and safety. Accident and e-health cost money. Cost may be direct, which is measurable, arising directly from accident. Indirect, arise as a consequence of the event but may not directly involve money, often difficult to quantify. Those things that you cannot insure against, that you cannot indemnify against. Alright, some such as uh, cost of loss of customer goodwill, uh, also industrial action strike, which as a result maybe disagreement or workers union. How can you quantify how long the strike will take and what amount of financial implication concerning the strike and all that? All these are things that you cannot quantify, and hence you cannot insure against them. Of course, the rest costs are those you can insure against, like cost of death, damaged goods, medical treatment, and all what have you. Health and safety failure can affect the broader economy as well as individual companies. Now, insured and uninsured costs we're going to be looking at. For insured costs, fire, you can insure against fire, you can insure against workers' injury or death. I talked about that a while ago. You can also insure against medical costs. For uninsured costs, this is the ice cream model, which says, sorry, iceberg model. For every one pound, right, cost that you incur, you have from 8 to 36 equivalent of uninsured, which can be loss of raw materials due to accident, sick pay over time, right, for to compensate for the man whose man hour has been lost, equipment repairs, lost material, and what have you. Now, we've come to the end of section 1.1, and we're going to look at some exercises. What are the three main reasons for managing health and safety? Of course, we said they are moral, legal, and economic. Alright, we said it is morally unacceptable for workers to go to work and get hurt. Legal, when personnel get hurt, it leads to the breakage or it leads to a breach of the law. And when laws are breached and cases are, given hearing in court, the result usually leads to fine, prosecution, incarceration, and what have you. And all those result or the result of legal proceedings cost money, which is the economic aspect. Cost of fines, cost of prosecution, cost of compensation, insurance premium, closure of your decision, all that cost money. So now you see how it's related: moral, legal, and economic. It is in that order. You don't interchange them. It has to go in that order. What should an employer provide to ensure health and safety? 1. Safe place of work. 2. Safe plant and equipment. 3. Safe system of work. 4. Training, supervision, and competence of staff. Training, supervision, and competence of staff. Now, regulating health and safety. We're looking at element 1.2. Legal reason for managing workplace health and safety. Most countries have health and safety laws. Failure to achieve legal minimum standards can lead to prosecution. So most countries have health and safety laws. Failure to achieve legal minimum standards can lead to prosecution. Now, international framework, International Labour Organization Agency of the United Nations. Most countries are members. Set international standards for health and safety by publishing conventions and recommendations. Okay. Now, conventions create binding obligation or policies to implement their provision. No legal authority unless ratified by the member states into its own legal structure. Take for instance, Nigeria is a member state, so they borrow the legal framework and all that, and now bring it into Nigeria and integrate it in accordance with the legal structure in Nigeria. Yes, they borrow, yes, the international recommendation from ILO, and then take it to their country and then rectify it into their own legal structure. A recommendation provides guidance on policy, legislation, and practice. Occupational Safety and Health Convention C155, a goal-setting policy for companies and nations. Occupational Safety and Health Recommendation 1981 RO 164 supplements the Convention C1 Convention 155 and gives more guidance on how to comply with these policies. Article 16 of Convention 155 identifies obligations placed on employers to ensure that workplaces, machineries, equipment, and work processes are safe without risk to health. To also ensure that chemicals, physical, and biological substances and agents are without risk to health when protective measures have been taken. They also provide adequate protective clothing and equipment to prevent risk of accident or adverse health effect. Everybody is responsible for health and safety. Now we're going to be looking at what the conventions, recommendation, what duty they place on the employers and as well as what the employees. So let's look at the employer's responsibility. Everybody is responsible for health and safety, but most of the responsibilities lies with the employer to provide safe place of work, to ensure that the workplace is safe, good lighting, have procedures in place, have workers trained, ensure that the plants are safe, the vessels they're using, they are calibrated and they are safe, all the equipment are safe. Like I see here, safe plant and equipment, safe systems of work, looking at procedures, permit system and all what have you. Training very important, supervision and competency of staff. Please always note that this responsibility placed on employers and employee is worthy of note because most times we get questions coming out from this section. Article 10 of our recommendation 164, which also gives a further explanation on the convention, provide and maintain workplaces, machineries and equipment, and use of working methods that are safe. Give necessary instructions, training, and supervision in application and use of health and safety measures. It also introduces organizational arrangement relevant to activities and size of undertaking. Also provide PPE and clothing without charge to workers. These are the same employer responsibilities. They also should ensure that the work organization, particularly working hours and rest breaks, does not adversely affect occupational safety and health. They also take reasonable practical measures with a view to eliminating excessive physical and mental fatigue. See the responsibility on the employer, further, giving better interpretation here with the recommendation. They also keep up to date with specific and technical knowledge to comply with the above. Now, this is also where the ILO convention recommendation places responsibility on the employees. Article 19 of C155 also places obligation on worker. It is also further expanded in recommendation 164 as follows. That employee should take reasonable care of their own safety and that of other people. That means your safety is important, and you also ensure that whoever is working with you, your colleague, contractor, and all that, you also ensure their safety. So you hear that saying that says, "Watch my back and watch your back." It is not just a slogan; it is a law. The law mandates that you take care of your own safety and that of others. They also comply with safety instructions and procedure laid down by the employer. They also use all safety equipment properly, report any situation that they may believe could be a hazard and which they cannot themselves correct. They should also report any work-related accident or ill health. Article 19 of C155 states that every worker must be given adequate information on actions the employer has taken to ensure safety and health. They must be given that information. Then they must be given the right to the necessary training in safety and health. You engage an employee, you train. And while they are doing the job, you also ensure that on the job training is never overemphasized. Keep on training for better results and better professional ways of workers doing things. The workers must also be consulted by the employer on all matters of safety and health relating to their work. Because if you don't consult with them, you just go around just giving information and instruction. They may not be able to contribute towards what you want to achieve, and what they do, they are not even allowed to have their input on. They don't see as their own. So such programs that you just introduce without consulting with the workers may suffer failure or setback. Giving the right to leave a workplace that has a reason to think that they have a reason to think present an imminent and serious danger to their life or to his life or health, and not to be compelled to return until it is safe. Now, this is another aspect that is very important: role of enforcement agencies. These are the ones that enforces the law, what the law prescribes. Now, there's no harmonized global standards. Each country have their own way of running their show when it comes to safety and enforcement. Country-specific agencies may include Health and Safety Enforcement Agency, Fire Authority, Insurance Company. Like our country in Nigeria, those that are saddled with responsibility of enforcing health and safety are the factory inspectors, Directorate of Labor, and all that. Police may be involved in enforcing health and safety laws in some countries. Some countries where people who enforces the law is against, you have to get the backing of police so as to ensure their safety. Now, the consequences of non-compliance, you see this man here now, is being handcuffed. When laws are breached, all right, breach of health and safety legislation is usually a criminal offense leading to enforcement action, improvement, prohibition, all right, and also the enforcement agency could also prosecute. They can prosecute the organization by fining them, and they can also prosecute the individual who probably may have broken the law, and they could be fined or imprisoned. So primarily, the role of enforcement agencies is that one, they carry the enforcement actions such that they might ask that your operations is not up to standard, you need to improve, and they give you a time frame or notice to ensure that you step up your game. And then they could also come and say, stop work. We don't want you to operate with this your old way of doing things, and we want you to improve. Otherwise, you remain shut down without operation. So they can also prosecute the individual, they can also prosecute organization. Individual can be fined, organizations can also be fined. The National Organization for Standard, which are part of other international standards, right? What we popularly know as ISO. They're the world license development of management standards. Example, there's 9001 quality management system. 40001 has to do with environmental management. ISO 1200 has to do with safety of machinery. These standards are not laws, they are good management practices, such that if you adopt them, if you decide to apply them to your system, to the way of doing business, it will help your system to be proactive, using the risk-based thinking, such that every area where you are prone to risk, all right, the system will help you identify them and prefer solutions so as to ensure that you have good customer satisfaction, you are able to meet the delivery on time, you are able to ensure that all bottlenecks that will that could hinder a seamless delivery of services and all that are taken care of. So they lead to a worldwide common approach to good management. Also, internationally recognized standard for occupational health and safety is currently ISO 5001-2018, which was a review of SARS 18001. Now, they all have one thing in common. They have 10 clauses. I've harmonized them. 10 clauses, where clause 1 to 3 are just nominating references, while clause 4 to 10 are the auditable clauses, where 4 has to talk about the context of the organization, 5 talks about leadership, 6 talks about planning, 7 talks about support, looking at personnel, infrastructure, machineries, and all what have you. While 8 has to do with operation, and 9 has to do with internal audit, and 10 continual improvement. So for 2001 is also compatible with 9001. That's why you hear about under 2001. I hear about the integrated management system. Now, another area you need to be you need to pay attention to is looking at sources of information. When you're talking about sources of information, we have internal and external. And when they ask you for source of information, you don't just rush into the question to answer, except they specifically ask you about internal or external. But when you just make it broad, asking for source of information, you need to have, if it's you look at also look at the question, the brackets, what each mark the question is requiring from you. If it's bracket 8 and they're asking source of information, so you know that you have 4 internal and 4 external. For internal, we'll look at accident records, medical treatment cases, first aid cases, drills, and all what have you. While international information, we're looking at health and safety executive, www.hse.gov.uk, the National Safety and Health Administration USA, looking at OSHA.gov, European Agency for Safety and Health at Work EU, OSHA.europa.eu.en, WorkSafe, Western Australia, and all what have you. Now, an employee has been injured at work. Identify potential direct cause of incident, indirect cause of the same incident. Direct cause, looking at fines in criminal court, compensation payable to victim, which is likely to be met by insurance cover, will therefore result in increased insurance premium. Okay. First aid treatment, worker sick pay, repair to or replacement of damaged equipment in building, loss of damaged product, loss of production time. Following that, maybe time for investigation and probably close down of the business and all that to allow for investigation. Dealing with injury, overtime make up for lost time. Okay, so cost associated with the rehabilitation of the injured person, worker, and their return to work. Examples of indirect costs. We're looking at loss of staff for productive duties over investigation, incident preparation report, you prepare a report, undertake a hospital visit, deal with a relative, attend court proceeding. You cannot quantify against all these costs. That's why they are called indirect costs. So that you cannot quantify it, then you can also indemnify. Insurance cannot give you a cover for it. Cost of remedial action following investigation, change of process or material. You cannot insure against such costs. That's why it's called indirect costs. So loss of staff morale, you cannot quantify staff morale that is high or low. You cannot allocate, can't allocate figure to it. So that's why it's called indirect cost. Then cost of remedial action following investigation, change of process, material, and not what have you. Compliance with enforcement notice by enforcement agents. You can't, quantify against that. Cost of recruiting and retraining temporary or replacement labor. General difficulties in recruiting and retaining staff as an indirect result of the incident. Loss of goodwill, customer following, delay in production, uh, and fulfilling order. Take for instance, you have target to meet to deliver goods to your client. At the end of the day, or to your customer, at the end of the day, due to an accident and all that, you're unable to meet that time. And once they lose that, you lose that customer goodwill. Of course, you know that you are losing. Uh, uh, you're going to be losing money, such that your goods could be tied down, and you don't have people to buy. Damage to public image when maybe somebody dies and they will start referring to that to company where somebody died, and that can bring about damage to good image. Damage to industrial relation perhaps leading to industrial strike, because can also bring about industrial strike because uh, a colleague has died and the union are demanding for compensation and all that. Now, discuss the criminal and civil law implication in the following. A technician escaped injury by diving under a bench when a vessel blows up as a result of a design defect. As a result of a design defect. Okay, because it's mandate the employer has the only responsibility to ensure that he provides safe plant, safe equipment, and safe system of work. So you know, you just go to town, market, and start buying buying vessels without having to go through procedure of testing to ensure that the safety factor is ensured and they've done testing and they also be on warranty and all that. Because if you have defective equipment and they are not properly controlled, it will bring about disaster and that can bring about death, loss of goods, properties, and even fire outbreak and all that. So another example is that a 12 years old boy breaks his arm falling into a pit while playing on an unfenced building. It's also a case where such company that refuse to fence uh, you know a construction site will also be fined. Why? Because the law mandates that whenever you are carrying out a construction, you must fence off the area to prevent unauthorized access. Machine operator is blinded in one eye by a colleague trying to help him remove a jam machine part using a hammer. There is a safe way to remove the jam part which does not involve the use of a hammer, and the area they are in is a mandatory high protection zone. Of course, you see that here the procedure are on ground, but uh, a fellow worker a colleague has due to breach of procedure, has in time to, in attempt to harm, has breached procedure and also blinded his colleague's eye. That colleague will also uh, you know sue him and collect claims because it is now a civil case. A scaffold is electrocuted, which the pole, when the pole he is carrying touches the live head cable, the scaffolder work for a company contracted to a roofing company, in turn contracted to a factory owner. The law says your responsibility is the responsibility of the employer to ensure the safety of the staff, contractors, visitors, and what have you for the period they are working in their facilities. So this is a criminal case, and the company will definitely be brought to book. Why? Because they're supposed to provide a safe of work, a safe place, safe plant, safe equipment, safe machineries. And when they're engaging contractor, they must ensure that it's go through the process of selection and ensure that the contractor has a track record, not just go and hire quacks, because of course it will also affect their work. End of module 1.2. What are the two main standards that ILO has produced for the health and safety? What do countries do with this standard? We see the C155 and R164. So what are the employer's responsibility under R164? We talked about that earlier on. Provide safe of work, safe plans, safe equipment, train staff, provide PPEs at no cost, and what have you. The employees responsibility ensure that they care for their safety and they ensure their safety and the safety of their colleague, cooperate with the employer in using that which they have provided as per PPE. They also report any accident or incident, no matter how small. They also have the right to stay off work if they know that there is a particular hazard that they could not close and their hazard, you know, poses threat to their life. What action could be taken against organization breaking health and safety law? You know, enforcement notice and also uh, prosecution. Enforcement notice has to do with uh, improvement notice and then prohibition, and then for prosecution we're saying that companies could be fined, individuals could be fined if they are found to broken the law. Who does what in addition? We're looking at another aspect now. Who does what? Looking at the organogram. The employer, the person or organization that employs people. The employer in this context is normally the organization, such as the company, and sometimes referred to as corporate body. They are the legal person. The employer responsibility for ensuring that workers is safe and free of health risk rests on the employer. As we noted earlier, this responsibility is made clear in ILO Convention C155 and ILO Recommendation 164. So the employer carries the ultimate responsibility in ensuring that workplace is safe and free of health and safety risk. Ensure that the safety of workers and others, e.g. visitors and contractors, are enforced, and ensure that workers and visitors and contractors, I talked about it earlier on, so the employer has bulk of the work to do. Now look at a typical organogram. Directors and senior managers, what do they do? Their responsibility. They give an organization its direction, they set its priorities, they allocate resources and appoint competent person. They also allocate responsibilities. They are responsible for ensuring that all the legal requirements are met. They provide resources because safety without management commitment, it is absolute zero. So for management to be committed to show that yes, they are following through and ensure that the system works, provide resources, to provide uh, the information. They will also ensure demonstration of leadership through participatory and also draw policies that work, the local resources, and also delegate people to ensure a smooth running of the company. So this is the top management. You see, you know, other directors report to them. They are decision body makers. Now, the role of director and senior manager. Directors and senior managers have enormous influence over their decision and its priority. The way they are perceived by those lower in the management hierarchy is very important. They must demonstrate clear commitment and leadership. Very key. Management staff must demonstrate clear commitment and leadership with regards to health and safety. Middle managers and supervisors. Middle managers and supervisors are involved in the day-to-day operational running of the organization, are responsible for the health and safety standards within the operations under their control. So you see supervisors here reporting to the middle managers and all what have you. So they are the ones that are into the day-to-day run. Now, share responsibility of joint occupiers of premises. This article is talking about when different companies are in one particular building, like a particular building where you have various floors, and these companies also have their own normal procedures as per managing health and safety and all that. But because they are in one building, this convention 165 article 17 and also the convention 164, all right, the convention 11 state the need for employers in share facilities and they should communicate to develop appropriate health and safety standards and appropriate policies and procedures so that anytime there's an emergency, they will speak one voice. Because if different companies like 10 have their different emergency response plan, and once there's any uh, uh, threat to life or emergency, they activate them, you see chaos. So this law is saying that yes, we take into consideration that at some point companies may dwell under the same roof, and we need to have them speak one language when it comes to emergency. So that may include sharing of procedures, fire and emergency response, sharing of risk assessment, joint management committee meetings, very important, so that they can be able to track and know what what is required of them at any given point in time. Now, this is another important aspect: contractor management. If a client can be held responsible for an injury caused by a contractor working for the client, then it must be in the client's own best interest to ensure that contractors do not, I repeat, they must ensure in the client's own best interest, all right, that contractors do not endanger workers or others. So looking at actually this we're talking about that time, while two slides away from here, the way that the client manager contractors can be broken down into three key areas. Looking at client managers contractors can be broken down into looking at selection, planning and coordination of the work, and also monitoring and managing the work. Monitoring and managing the work. Selection of contractors. These are things you look at, or companies or clients look at when they're selecting contractors. They check if they have health and safety policy. They also check if they have risk assessment. What have they put in place to ensure they manage risk. They also look at the qualifications and training record of their staff, and for specific craft that require special training. They also ensure that they have records of competent people who do carry out those specific tasks. Membership of professional bodies to ensure that okay they have a way of keeping to date knowledge and as per international best practice by belonging to a professional body. Maintenance and equipment testing. You must maintain equipment, the equipment and ensure that they tested. Why? Because if you fail to maintain your equipment while working in the field or working for a client, it will break down. Once they break down, it leads to downtime. And when there's downtime, you're not able to meet up your client target, and that can also lead to the client not meeting up with your production plan and time frame, and that can also lead to the client losing that contract. Accident records. All right, check if the accident looking at over a period of time. Look at the trend. Is it on an increase? Is it on a decrease? Why and what could be done, and what to ensure that they are able to uh, work in such manner that accidents, near misses, incident are reduced very minimum. And then you have to check again if there are enforcement action taken against such companies. They've been sanctioned by enforcement agencies before. Know that the adequate resources provided. If you have adequate resources to carry out contracts that uh, they are to execute and all what have you. Now, planning and coordinating the work. Information to be shared between client and contractors. Of course, they have to know hazard posed by site and work carried out, hazard posed by contractors' activity. They also look at risk assessments and method statements. How you're going to be carrying out the job, what methodology you're going to be using, and all that. It has to be agreed upon. And here, the client will also ensure that agreed procedures, agreed methods, statements, and all that are followed through. And that brings us to the last part to ensure that they ensure that activities do not conflict. Permit to work system is used to control those activities like simultaneous operation where some jobs cannot grow concurrently. The system will have to ensure that one stop for the other. And then which was the last part, which has to do with monitor and managing the work. Client must ensure that contractors play according to the rules and work in accordance with the methodology they claim to present, how they're going to kind of the job, so that they stick to it, don't deviate, so as to maintain standard. And client has the responsibility to stop work if there's unsafe practice. And auditing against agreed method statement is a good technique. So you said you do XYZ. Let us see how you do the XYZ. That's what auditing against agreed method statement is all about. End of module 1.3. To whom does an employer owe a duty with regards to health and safety? Of course, the employee, contractors, visitors, and all that. How can directors influence health and safety? They also demonstrate commitment and good leadership. What are the key worker responsibilities? We talked about that to ensure their safety and safety of others, cooperate with the employers, uh, use PPEs that are provided for uh, well, use them well, and report any defect. They must also ensure that they report any accident or incident, no matter how small, and they also have the right to leave a workplace if they so sense that the particular hazard is capable of posing a threat to their life, and they are not to return until that situation is brought under control and the hazard eliminated. So in summary, we have introduced some keywords such as health, safety, and welfare. These are the three main reasons why an organization has to manage health and safety, which can be summarized as moral, legal, and financial. We also set out the basic requirement of international standard and govern health and safety, that cover health and safety. Looking at the ILO Convention C155 and Recommendation 164. We also discuss the consequences for employers and workers of non-compliance with legal standards together with the possible issue of workers' compensation. We also noted some source of information, on national health and safety standards. We also identify various parties within and outside of the workplace and the responsibilities that they have. We've also considered the responsibility that a client has for the management of contractors and outlined the steps that a client should take to choose a contractor and plan and monitor their work. We have come to the end of element 1, and the next class we'll be looking at element 2. So thank you.